Afternoon, everybody. Happy Maundy Thursday. Today we are remembering Jesus' last meal with his friends. It's the meal that we came to enshrine in tradition through our communion services. And it was a time when they were celebrating the Passover, which in itself was already a very special event for them. And for the apostles became more so as that last time when they got to celebrate with Jesus. After the meal, of course, we know that he went to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray and to have one last communion with his Father before being arrested and sent to the ultimate end, which was crucifixion. Today's passage is from that scene in Gethsemane, and it's from Luke chapter 22, verses 41 and 42. And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, and knelt down and prayed, saying, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. I also want to read to you from a book called Who. It's a paraphrased prose translation of the New Testament, and I quite like the way that this passage is represented in there. He walked forward, and a few steps later collapsed to the ground. Father, he cried out, you can do anything. If there's any way out of this, please rescue me. But you know my deepest desire is to fulfill your purposes. I'm ready to do whatever you ask of me. Jesus was God. He was also man. He had feelings and he had fears, and he knows intimately all the possible extremes of our own feelings. He lived them all himself. He lived more. He understands our shortcomings when it comes to courage. He gets that there are times when we might balk at a task. There are times when we might think, I can't do this, I'm not ready for this, I'm not prepared for this, I just don't want to do it. He experienced it with followers himself, and he experienced it uniquely as God in man, experiencing things that we can't understand, but things that we may not really appreciate sometimes that he can understand. So he knows that there are times when we might be scared, or we might be fearful, or we might want to withdraw from things. But he also knows that those shortcomings can be overcome. He knew that he came to earth to do what was right, to fulfill God's purposes, and he wanted to do that. But and I think it was really healthy of him to acknowledge that he was scared of it. You know, how many times do we try and do things and pretend it's all fine, only to later on find it comes crumbling around our ears because we were building on an unsure foundation. But when we acknowledge those fears, they don't go away, but they are shored up. They are given the comfort and the support that means they can be taken forward and acted upon. And that's what Jesus did. He acknowledged that he was struggling, and he got it out there. But he still turned around and said, but I know what's right and I'm willing to do it. And I think that's a pretty easy message for us to understand. You know, doing what's right might be scary, it might be difficult, it might just be plain tedious. But if it's right, and we know it's right, then we know we can do it. And we can do it by following the example of Jesus, who came as a man and showed us that as a human being, these things can be done. I will see you tomorrow for Good Friday, the best of days, and the worst of days. Good night.